are beginning with our Democratic candidates. They are both seated on the left side of the stage, starting with Democratic United States Representative Colleen Hanabusa. She is the great-granddaughter of Japanese immigrants, born in Honolulu and raised in Waianae. She has her bachelor's, master's, and law degree from UH and the UH School of Law. She served in the Hawaii State Senate from 1998 through 2010 and served as Hawaii's first female Senate president. She served in the United States House of Representatives from 2011 through 2015, returned to Hawaii to practice law, and became member and chair of the Honolulu Rail Authority, and then returned to the U.S. House in 2016. She is on the House Committees on Armed Services, Natural Resources, and Science, Space, and Technology. And just to remind you, we're holding all of our applause till the very end. Thank you so much. Democratic candidate, City Governor David Ige, was born and raised in Pearl City and is the fifth of 6 sons. He attended public schools in Pearl City and earned his Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering at UH Manoa, where he met his wife, Dawn. He worked for GTE Hawaiian Tel, earned his MBA at UH Manoa, and began his political career in 1985 after being appointed to the State House of Representatives. He was elected to the State Senate in 1994, representing Aiea and Pearl City. He was elected governor of Hawaii in 2014, and he and Dawn have 3 children. Thank you, Governor Ige. And next we have 2 Republican candidates. Republican candidate John Carroll was born in Kansas and moved to Japan with his father. Carroll joined the Merchant Marines and docked in Honolulu after many global trips. He has his bachelor's in education from UH Manoa, where he had a football scholarship. Mr. Carroll has experience as a lawyer, a Hawaii State Senator and House member, Hawaiian Airlines pilot, international businessman, truck driver, glass-bottom boat diver, radio announcer, elementary school teacher, commercial glider pilot, dishwasher, and lumberjack, and he has 6 children, and I think he said last night at the Waimea Forum that he has 400 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, no, 33, right? 32? 23. I knew it was a big number. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. He complained that we only gave him a 100-word bio because he said he's 90, and that's really not fair, 1 word per year, but he did it. Andrea Tupola is a Republican candidate, and she is a state House representative, and she served in the Hawaii House of Representatives representing Nanakuli and Ko'olina area since 2014. Representative Tupola formerly was a professor of music at Leeward Community College, and she graduated from Kamehameha Schools and has a bachelor's and a master's in music from Brigham Young and from UH Manoa, and is working on her PhD. She is married with 2 children. Let's give a warm round of applause to our governor candidates today. As I mentioned, we had a lot of questions submitted in advance of the forum, and between those and the questions submitted by or developed by the folks who are sponsoring the forums, we have many, many questions, so we are not going to take additional questions tonight. And again, I do urge you, before you leave here, to pick up literature from all of the candidates' tables, some of whom are not on stage tonight, and learn as much as you can about the candidates. I'd like to start with Governor David Ige. We have a very unusual situation going on here right now on our island, as you all very well know. So we really couldn't ignore the fact that we have the lava flow in Leilani Estates area. And what we'd like to do, because we want to ask all the candidates questions as to how they're going to handle things, we'd first like Governor Ige to take 60 seconds, 1 minute, and detail what exactly the state has done to address the lava flow situation. 60 seconds, please, Governor Ige.
Thank you. I just want to let you know that the state, county, and federal partners have been very active in responding to the eruption in the East Rift Zone. Within 24 hours of it actually starting, I had reached out to the White House and to FEMA to let them know that I thought that we would have a very important event that we needed to all state, county, and federal partners respond to. We have been focused on the health and safety of our community, and the first thing that we did is looked at the Puna geothermal facility, and we took action to shut it down, to quench the wells, and to plug them so that we could ensure the health and safety of our community. We have been acting ever since to ensure that the community is safe, activating the National Guard and other assets to respond.
Thank you, Governor Ige. Now, I'd like to ask you, and then I'm going to ask the other candidates, but Governor Ige first, take 2 minutes. Clearly, we're not done with this situation. So take 2 minutes, and I'd like you to speak, and then I'm going to ask each of you to speak about the immediate things that need to be done, not yet looking at the longer term, but clearly there's a lot still that needs to be done. So immediately, and let's say for you, Governor Ige, in the next 6 to 12 months, what do you think needs to be done?
Sure.
2 minutes.
Just a couple of things immediately. I did execute my executive authority. Mayor Kim had requested financial assistance to the county. He was definitely concerned about being able to sustain the activity. And so I authorized and transferred $12 million from the state to the county to support the county's effort. We have been focused on the immediate health and safety of the community. We continue to monitor the facilities and the eruption 24/7, 365 days out of the year to ensure that we can alert the public and take appropriate action to evacuate or other activities as necessary. You know, we are looking at emergency housing, public-private partnerships, and you might have seen the article about erecting 20 shelters on the property at Sacred Hearts. It was complete public-private partnership. National Guard was involved with constructing the facilities. As you are aware, we just got the president to declare a federal disaster for individual assistance, and that really does enable a number of things dealing with emergency shelter, transition, unemployment, trauma, and a number of other things. So we continue to work as state, federal, county partners to find a way forward. We are focused in terms of moving forward. As you heard, we have a task force, county, federal, state, creating a new vision for what we would want to see happen in terms of long-term housing for those impacted by the lava flow. We are looking also at economic repair. What actions can we take to promote visits to the Hawaii Island? We're talking about trying to establish a viewing site because we do know that it's the most important facility.
Scott? I still like Scott Ordway back here, even though he cut me off instead of Governor Ige. When you said you could do it, I didn't think you were talking me. Rep. Hanabusa, if you are elected governor, you will take office in January, and what we'd like to know is, in the short term, if you think state assistance will still be appropriate, what do you think will need to be done for Hawaii Island relative to recovery from the lava flow on a short-term basis, 6 months or whatever?
First of all, thank you to the Kona Kohala Chamber for sponsoring this. I think the most important thing, and I don't disagree with Governor Ige, that health and safety is paramount. It should be the paramount concern in the short run. Safety, because we have been very fortunate in that we have not lost any lives. When you look at Guatemala, that is really a feat as to what has happened. And I think it's because we have amazing partners in terms of the whole USGS as well as the National Park Service and how they have studied our volcano. The health aspects of it, I think we have to look first at the students. I think we need monitoring. I do not believe that you have monitors at all of the schools as to whether or not the children should be out or should be there. This is also extremely critical. The other thing we have to do is for both the people as well as the businesses or the growers in particular that have lost everything, especially in the Kopoho area, we have to look at what is it that they need. They need to have hope. That's what they're all saying. I met with many of them today and they said they need hope. They want to have answers as to what the prognosis is for them, especially in the agriculture area. The economic conditions for the Big Island is extremely critical. So for example, I don't know if you know that 80% of our papaya is grown in the Puna Kopoho area, 50% in the Kopoho area. It's not there anymore, and it won't be there anymore. So what do they do? So when I met with the farmers this morning, they said, we just want to know. We want to know what we can do. And of course, ornamentals are also in the Kopoho area. This is going to completely change. We need to do that. We need to work with Park Service because, believe it or not, Volcano has more visitors per year than Valor of the Pacific in Pearl Harbor. Imagine what that means to your economic stability.
Thank you, Rep. Hanabusa. Mr. Carroll, If you are elected governor, what in the short term will you do once elected to assist the people in East Hawaii relative to the lava flow on a short-term basis, if you think state assistance will be appropriate at that time? 2 minutes, please.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm really happy that every one of you folks is here, and really thank everyone who put this marvelous group together. I really have hope for the future, seeing that this kind of thing happens. I'd also like to really thank Governor Ige at this time, who happens to be one of the nicest governors we've ever had. I think he's doing a terrific job handling this. I've been following it through people that are on my campaign committee that are around and near the volcano. What I would like to say about this is, if we had me as governor or mayor 50 years ago, this never would have happened. I saw in the 50s where Kapoho, a papaya place, just blew up. All of a sudden, this whole papaya place is gone. As later on, I was flying around in the volcano, flying around an eruption. They had volcanic ash, or not ash, but actual pieces of lava going up 2,000 feet in the air, and I'm flying around this thing. I just could not believe the power and the really glory of this thing. And nobody should ever have been allowed to build a home there, and the developers that did that ought to be put in jail, as far as I'm concerned. I also believe that the people in the government that allow them to develop those areas should also go to jail, or at least be seriously fined. I would follow exactly what Governor Ige is doing as governor. I think they've opened the roads. They've done a lot of tremendously good things in the past month, actually, and I'm very pleased with what he's done. I'd also like to add that as a state representative and senator, I worked very carefully with the Democrats. Most of them are really terrific folks. They just need good leadership, and that's what John Carroll brings to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Representative Tupola, if you are elected, what would you do in the short term if you think state assistance is appropriate for the folks on the east side of the island, everything relative to the lava flow in the short term? 2 minutes, please.
Well, first off, thank you for this forum here tonight, and I was grateful to spend the whole week on the island. On Tuesday, I was actually able to go out to Puna. I went to Pahoa. I got to see the Civic Center. I got to walk through Pu'uhonua, Puna. I also got to see the project that the governor alluded to on Sacred Heart's property. And it was great for me to see not just the families that were affected, but all the other families that are feeling the effects of what happens when families are displaced. Where do they go? What do we do? Because people are not just in the public shelters. They are seeking refuge on the streets, in the beaches, in their cars, asking other community members if they can live with them. And so I think the first thing, for the first 6 months, we really have to start to envision, what do we want Puna to look like in a year, in 2 years, in 4 years? I looked out at the Pahoa District Park and I thought, my goodness, there are places like this on the west side of Oahu that it took years for us to transform. And so we need to find solutions now. The second thing is that people were in desperate need of leadership. I saw a lot of different competing entities, from the Salvation Army to the Red Cross to World Central Kitchen that's making the food, to volunteers that are trying to transport the food. Lots of people who want to help, but lots of confusion. A lot of people wanting to know who's the mainstay, what's the bigger strategy, how long is this going to last? And actually on the project where we saw the 20 homes, I want to thank personally Bronson Haunga and Gail Aguinaldo, who actually were the two that spearheaded that project. And I got to talk with them and I asked them, how long are people going to be able to stay in these homes? They said, maybe 2 months. And that's disheartening to me, because we have a lot of those solutions on Oahu where it's so short term that there's not enough long-term solutions to get us out of the crisis. So we need more permanent solutions. And I'm personally taking part in a housing project right now in that area, and I'm grateful to participate in the relief.
Thank you very much. I'd like to follow up with a short 30-second follow-up for each of you, really based, Mr. Carroll, on what you said. You said development should never have been allowed in that area, and I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the book Land and Power in Hawaii, which Chapter 8 is a fascinating chapter. It exactly goes into that detail. So my question for each one of you is, even though this is generally a county decision to allow development, the question is, as governor, what position would you take on allowing folks to build homes in Lava Zone 1, particularly Lava Zone 1 such as that, which last had an eruption only 1955, which is, I think, like 60 years ago. And let's start with you, Mr. Carroll. 30 seconds only.
Number one, it's a no-brainer. The legislature has to make a prohibition on that type of land use. We have conservation land, and so forth, and we can make in the legislature a provision for a specific provision that people should not be allowed to develop or build homes anywhere in that area where there's danger of the place being erupting and being blown out. They had the same thing happen in the 60s. A friend of mine, actually, Dave Ford, had put in a whole little subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I appreciate it. Mr. Pola, Rep. Tupola, 30 seconds. Yes, no, what?
First off, I do believe in county home rule. I do believe that we should support, the initiatives of the county, and I would highly encourage the mayor, city council here on this island to make sure that the zoning is such. And I think on the state level, we see too much the state government reaching in and doing, and I would say that in the event that the county doesn't support that, then we should definitely create some statewide legislation if that is the will of the people.
Governor Ige, what's your position? 30 seconds.
I don't believe that we should allow new construction of new facilities in Lava Zone 1. I really do think that the risk involved is too great. They would have tremendous challenges. They would not have access to any insurance as a practical reality. And we just shouldn't be building new facilities or new residences on Lava Zone 1.
Thank you. Rep. Hanabusa.
First of all, we have to be sure that the designation is correct, and it is a home rule issue, but I would not support the continuation of building within that district. However, be aware that what we also have to be cognizant of is that we have different kinds of rights that exist. Kuleana land rights, for example, is one. So I would encourage people to go look at Kikala Kiokea and what the state did. I think that's one way to address this problem.
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue our discussion a little bit of the economy because of the lava flow issue, starting with you, Representative Tupola. The lava flow has clearly created an economic crisis for this island, and although right now we have a short-term crisis, it's probably going to be a little bit longer term. Right now we have losses in tourism, a general business drop-off, a new homeless population that never intended to be homeless, and that may or may not be addressed by their own insurance. Some of them either didn't have insurance for obvious reasons, or they're finding it difficult to get payouts. So on a longer term basis, let's get 2 minutes from each one of you, starting with you, Rep. Tupola. How do you plan to address the longer term economic impact of this lava crisis? 2 minutes, please.
Well, I think first off, what a lot of people have mentioned is that we really need to take control of what's going on in the national media. As you guys know, we are either the #1 or the #2 story every night. And a lot of people are still concerned and confused, and they think they're going to get off the plane and they're going to trip on lava because they're not sure where it is or what island it's on. And I think that a lot of national media people have highlighted the fact that we are losing that economic business because we need to make sure that the narrative of the media is correct. Secondly, I think that for our local businesses, even prior to this crisis, we haven't really discussed in extent and in depth how much we need to support our local businesses, whether that's startup capital, and in this case, some of them lost everything from the place that they were conducting business to all the people that they were making money from. So we need to think about how that startup capital is going to apply in this situation. We have grants via Department of Economic Business and Development. We actually have enterprise zones. So how are we going to help some of these businesses start up that capital? And then thirdly, we definitely need to look into and ask the question to business owners here on the state side, what can we do more to help? Because a lot of times we think we know everything. You come to the island and it's a different story than what you thought. So we need to get input from these business owners on maybe the fact that we need to support more agricultural business, agribusiness development. Maybe we need to make sure that businesses on the other side of the island aren't suffering because of all the displacement of families. I do know at Spencer's, people are concerned about the growing population there. So I think it's got to be a conversation that happens with a lot of community input and, of course, implementing a lot of business help, from cutting business taxes to cutting out regulations, to really realize that we should have been helping businesses all along, but now it's accelerated.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll, if you're elected, tell us in 2 minutes what you would like to do relative to the longer-term impact of the lava based on the things that I described. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. My favorite subject. By the way, Marissa Hearns, who's running for Lieutenant Governor, was not able to be here tonight. She's at my table. I hope you. But anyway, the problem with this state right now is that we're in economic chaos, and the reason why is quite clear to me. It's the Jones Act, the shipping restrictions, which totally violate the constitutional provisions of the Commerce Clause of the United States. That Commerce Clause says that every state should have equal access to interstate commerce with the states, nations, and Indian tribes. Hawaii has no pipeline, highway, or railroad, and yet because our congressional delegation in including back to Jan and Noe, have stopped any chance of this thing ever happening. Ed Case made a position of having a hearing on that. The next thing, Ms. Hanabusa was in his seat in Washington. So the reason I'm running for governor rather than U.S. senator is because I've been told by Sam Sloan, as governor, you can probably get the Jones Act restrictions. These restrictions are imposed by a 1920 law, which was designed primarily to protect Seattle shippers from Canadian shippers who are shipping stuff to Anchorage more cheaply. The law says that if a ship is not built, maintained, and flagged in America, it cannot go in interstate commerce. So ships from Korea, China, Japan, and so forth cannot come here, drop off a load. They've got to go another 5,000 miles, put on a Matson ship, and come back here. And that has got to stop. And as governor, I've already started making inroads with the president to do that. Puerto Rico just declared bankruptcy. They said the main reason they did that is because of the Jones Act restrictions on them. So Guam, Alaska, Hawaii should not have the Jones Act. We will get rid of it. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Representative Hanabusa, please address in 2 minutes what you would expect and plan to do relative to the longer-term economic impact of this lava flow. 2 minutes.
The problem with the economic recovery is going to be one tied to which industry. For example, with tourism, like I said earlier, it was really eye-opening to know that the national park of the Volcano National Park is the most visited site in the whole state, more than Pearl Harbor is. So that's clearly something that's going to impact this island and impact those who come to visit. So that's got to be addressed. There's got to be, whether they do an alternative site or some way of getting them into the park. And I was meeting with the Park Service this morning on that specific issue. The other part of the economic recovery for this island is really the merchants. That's one. But the other one are your people who are growing. Big Island is known for its agricultural base. So as I stated earlier, to know that the papaya farmers, for example, 80% of the state's papaya is produced in Puna and Kapoho, and there is no Kapoho, 50% is from there. What are we going to do? Not only in terms of the actual provision of those products, but also what do they do? What do the farmers do who have basically made it their life to grow in Kapoho? Then you have the ornamentals, orchids, no question. Beautiful representative of the Big Island. They are also not going to grow. The most important thing that we're going to have to do in the long term is get the people to feel like there is a future and there is a place for them. When I met with the farmers this morning, what they were saying is, we just want to know. We want to know what the future is for us. We want to know if we can pick up and go. What is it that we need to do? These are important, and you just take that whole philosophy across the board to everyone who is affected, and that's going to be the long-term challenge for anyone who's governor of the state of Hawaii.
Thank you, Rep. Hanabusa. Governor Ige, you've addressed some of the short-term issues. Give us a look at the long term. 2 minutes, please.
Certainly, it certainly will be a challenge, and it's really something that all of us in this community need to work together and see how we can make a difference for Hawaii island economy. You know, first and foremost, it would be to focus on those actions that we can take to repair the economy as it exists. It is about promoting Hawaii Island as a destination. We've talked about trying to create a visitor attraction within the volcano viewing area and trying to create a safe viewing area. As Colleen had said, the number one attraction is visiting or watching the eruption. If we can work with the parks, the county, and the state and identify a viewing area, we could begin to attract visitors back to Hawaii Island. HTA does have an emergency response fund, $5 million that they can put on the table when the time is appropriate. We need to market traveling to Hawaii Island. I think it's very, very important to do that. And we did certify Kona International for international travelers. I think it's a real opportunity for us to pursue direct flights from Korea, China, and other destinations so we can bring more visitors and high-paying international visitors to this island. Second step really is about investing in infrastructure. We've already authorized $1.1 billion for Hawaii Island in CIP projects. We should really look at which ones we can accelerate and implement quickly. It can create jobs in this economy. Third is really about repairing damage. creating jobs, employing local people to recover in that regard. Fourth, I believe, is accelerating renewable energy deployment. I've asked the PUC to convene. Puna is out of commission. Puna geothermal, what opportunities do we have for new renewable projects?
Thank you, Governor Ige. But with that, you've all talked a lot about tourism. Clearly, it's our number one industry, and we've asked you, or whoever was a candidate for the last 15 or 20 years, how do we diversify our economy so tourism does not have such a major impact on us? And now we're in a situation where we have a problem, and tourism is our number one industry, and we are impacted all over the island because of this. So Governor Ige, I'd like to go back to you for 2 minutes. What more do you think the state can do and should do to help really diversify this economy so we are not so dependent on tourism? 2 minutes, please.
Certainly I do believe that it begins with creating an innovation economy, looking for ways that we can support research and development in the islands. I've been a strong supporter of the GVS Accelerator that's here in Kona, and looking at identifying companies and facilitating the development of digital media products and then being able to distribute them all around the world. It really is creating those kinds of opportunities for new industry, new technology that really can make a difference in this community. I do believe that the National Energy Laboratory here in Nelha is another real asset that we need to do more to attract businesses. We have had and we've made investments in critical infrastructure for Nelha that allows us to expand the activity. We need to get aggressive. It is a competitive advantage. Nelha gives this community an asset that is found in very few places in the world, and we need to promote it, identify those business opportunities that would be interested and would benefit from being located here in Kona in West Hawaii. And the third area that I've always believed in is about education and being able to attract expand the educational opportunities on the east side in Hilo as well as west side. We have a brand new Palamanui campus. What can we do to attract new investment in higher education opportunities that benefit our community, as well as attracting new higher education institutions that would want to make that investment here in the community. I supported the School of Pharmacy on the Hilo side, encouraging them to be able to expand to attract the students that we can bring to create economic activity.
Thank you very much. Representative Hanabusa, if you're elected governor, 2 minutes on how you're going to help us diversify our economy, specifically for Hawaii Island, so tourism does not have such a huge chunk of what we do. Please.
As you stated earlier, one of the committees that I've sat on in the United States Congress is Armed Services. And one of the first panels I was on, people, just 7 of us were there. We traveled throughout the United States, including Hawaii. And in Akron, Ohio, of all places, there were placards of what they were doing, and they were doing nanotechnology. They were addressing corrosion, the only degree in corrosion in the United States. And there was the University of Hawaii symbol there. So I asked the president of the University of Hawaii, why is the University of Akron, why is the University of Hawaii symbol there? He said, because you should really be interested that there is no place in this world where you can actually test all the various ecosystems except for Hawaii. And that's why they are in partnership with the University of Hawaii. I think that of every place, it is this island. This island has been underutilized in terms of what it can do and why we should be here. When there was a debate about the School of Pharmacy, and people from the legislature asked me, why should the School of Pharmacy be on the Big Island and not someplace on Oahu? I said, because what Hawaii Island has are the ecosystems, and we need to look to the future and look to the true development of what we can in terms of not only academics, in terms of research and the testing. That is Hawaii Island's really value, is its absolute uniqueness. That is what we have to go forward in. Whether you look at a Nelha, you look at what is grown there, you look at anything else, the education facilities, what is natural for Hawaii Island. That is Hawaii Island's future. And as governor, I would tell you, I am somebody who just looks at that and believes that this is what we have to begin to emphasize. Tourism is still going to play a role, some role, but
Thank
we
you.
must look at
Thank
that.
you, Rep. Hanabusa. Mr. Carroll, if you are elected governor, what do you plan to do to help diversify the economy for this island, on this island?
Well, first of all, it's very, very clear to me over the years that I have been around, and I know age is always an issue, but I'm definitely old enough to run for governor. So the major component of our economy used to be agriculture. Agriculture is the most important thing that should be going on here. I will do everything I can, including getting rid of the restrictions for shipping that we have, in order to allow agriculture to become productive and to become the number one component. Singapore has about 225 square miles of land. We have over 6,000 square miles of land. Singapore's gross domestic product is like $121 billion a year. Hawaii's gross domestic product is about $70 billion, most of which is tourism and government spending. That has got to change. That's what's burning me up inside, because we cannot get this bill passed. I filed 2 lawsuits on to get rid of the Jones Act. We did not lose the lawsuits on the issue. We lost it on standing, but right now we can go in and, in fact, the first thing I'm going to do as governor is to file a class action in federal court to get the Jones Act restrictions removed on the basis of violation of interstate commerce. The next thing that I also intend to do is to file a class action asking the federal court to do a total forensic audit of the entire thing that went on with HART from the $3 billion that we're supposed to start with in 2005 to where we are right now. There's a whole lot of things that need to be done. I cannot really explain them all in 2 minutes, and I'll be happy to stay here for 2 hours if anybody wants to hear it. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Ms. Tupola, Rep. Tupola, if you're elected, what are you going to do to help us diversify our economy, please?
You know, I think the main thing that we need to remember is that our state is still a large, large portion. In fact, almost 90% is still zone rural. We have a lot of agricultural land on this island alone. We are land rich. I mean, there's land everywhere. And it's been one of the initiatives that we haven't seen take the forefront in our state, is helping our agriculture, helping our ranchers, helping our farmers. And I think that we should be the agricultural technology capital of the world. We have 10 of the 14 climates that exist in the world, and we should embrace new forms of farming. We should cut down on the regulations that are holding farmers back, and actually, we should be jumping on some of the initiatives that are taking fire across the United States to rebuild rural infrastructure. And a lot of the reasons why we've come away from farming is because that infrastructure costs so much, from irrigation to actual machinery that you need to farm the land. Not just here on this island when I've talked with farmers, but also in Kauai, in Kealia. Farmers have told me, we have acres and acres of land, but no wherewith to farm it. And we don't have the money to install the infrastructure in order to rehabilitate our land. And this shouldn't just be important for us to diversify our economy, but this should be important for us because we are an island that imports 90% of our food. And so when we think about our sustainability in events of emergency, we need to have food security. And if we actually diversify our economy and put the money and the effort into supporting agricultural initiatives, we will start to see that we will start to sustain ourselves, support local businesses, support local farmers, support local produce. And we've wanted that this whole time, but we haven't put the effort in to do it. We have a corporation within one of our agencies called Agribusiness Development Corporation, and we should definitely be going through there and auditing all the money that's going into there and making sure that it has direct impact to help farmers as well as help workhouse farming development.
Thank you. We are going to completely change topics now, and this is going to be a yes-no question. Representative Hanabusa, do you support the construction of 30-meter telescope?
Yes.
Governor Ige?
Yes.
Rep. Tupola?
No.
Mr. Carroll?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry. Do you support the construction of the 30-meter telescope?
30-meter telescope.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. I want to do a 30-second follow-up. Rep. Tupola, why do you not support the construction of 30-meter telescope?
I've read extensively the amount of mismanagement that's happened on Mauna Kea, and I'm thoroughly convinced that the first step forward is that we have to fix the mismanagement. The auditor's report 1998, 2005, 2014, 2017. I've read the full comprehensive management plan. The biggest issue that we're having here is that we need to actually fix the management issue, because all of that will not be able to have any type of progress if you don't fix the root of the problem. I would encourage you to read through the auditor's reports.
Thank you. I'd like to sort of stay on that, which is sort of actually, it's going to be a 30-second question, and the big issue is whether University of Hawaii will be able to renew the master lease for astronomy on the top of the mountain. So do you support the renewal of the master lease? And I'm going to ask each of you this. Rep. Tupola?
We discussed at the legislature this year about a different type of management authority, and it's something that we should heavily consider, because seeing as though these recommendations from the auditor came years ago, decades ago, and none of them have been implemented. All 8 suggestions given by the auditor, none of them have been implemented. We have to think about whether or not it is the right managing entity to be able to handle a project of this nature. And we also have to make sure that as we read through that comprehensive management plan, that we make sure that it's not just the master lease, but the subleases that UH has been given out and their ability to have accountability.
Mr. Carroll, do you support the renewal of the master lease for University of Hawaii to manage astronomy on the mountain, please?
Yes, I do, and the reason I do is when I was in the House many years ago, they gave 1/3 of the control of the mountain to Canada and 1/3 to France, which I thought was idiotic, and the last third goes to University of Hawaii. As far as I'm concerned, the Hawaiian culture has been based upon Hawaiian navigators, and I think that telescope basically represents a furthering of the astronomical involvement, and I think that the best thing to do to stop it at this point is going to be absolutely ridiculous. So.
Thank you. Governor Ige.
Yes, I do support the renewal of the lease for university. They should and will be required to do an environmental impact statement. I've also asked them to return 10,000 acres and have the university only keep the 400 acres that are specific to astronomy, so that we can create a different entity to manage the cultural, traditional, and Native Hawaiian aspects of the summit.
Thank you. Representative Hanabusa.
Supporting TMT is a different issue than whether the university should be in control. And I am not convinced that the university has been a good steward, and that renewing the lease with them should be the way that we should proceed. I think come the 21st of this month, we'll hear the final arguments before the Hawaii Supreme Court on the specific issues. But I think that we need to move forward on TMT, but we need to move forward with good faith to show people that we have learned from the problems of the past.
Thank you. I'd like to continue on this topic and ask a 90-second question, and it is, if you are governor and if 30-meter telescope is granted the right to continue and proceed, what will you do to ensure that construction can proceed? That the 30-meter telescope folks can get to the top of the mountain, that they can do their building? Mr. Carroll, is my question clear?
Well, as far as
90 seconds.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that it should be, if it's going to happen and we're going to go forward with it as a privatized matter, we should not be spending any taxpayers' money on it. If I understood the question.
The question is more, when 30-meter telescope was, at that time, given the okay to proceed, they were not able to get to the top of the mountain. They were blocked by people who did not want them to go up to the mountain. So the question is, if they are granted the legal right to do that, I'll give you another minute, Mr. Carroll, what would you do to make sure they could actually get there?
If it's blocked by the court, you mean?
No, sir, by people standing in the road.
Well, that's why we have law and police officers, so it shouldn't be allowed as far as I'm concerned.
Ms. Tupola, 90 seconds.
The issue with enforcement, and this is what everyone should know, is that it stipulates specifically in the auditor's report that there is no administrative rules for the mountain. So when an agency gets the authority to manage an entity, the first thing they're supposed to do is create administrative rules. Why do you need that? So that when incidents happen, that you have a way that you actually can proceed with protocol, with rules, with enforcement. I actually talked with the chief of police when this whole episode went down because everyone was confused on what we were enforcing, what are the rules, what are the regulations. So that is actually part of the management issue we're having, is that the administrative rules have never been completed. Therefore, BLNR sent their care officers over because it was their lease. Even the BLNR officers didn't know what to do. So again, back to the root of the problem, the management issue lies in that there are 8 specific steps that have not been abided by, and you need to go through them in order to do it. Part of making the administrative rules requires getting community input and allowing everyone to weigh in, and that's why some of this hasn't proceeded. And so in order to address that question, it has to go back to the fact that each of those steps has to be taken.
Thank you. Representative Hanabusa, if 30-meter telescope is given the legal authority to proceed, how would you ensure they can actually get to the mountain and do the building?
This is an issue that's been troubling me since at least 2015, where I taught UH Law School, and this was my final exam question to my students. I will tell you this, one of the things that we have to step back. And the first thing we have to step back and analyze is that what people do not know is half of Mauna Kea, the lower half, is actually the property of Hawaiian homelands. And the road that goes up there is an issue because I believe they have not executed an extension of that lease for the road. It's a totally different state governmental entity that technically has control over access. So in order to address access, and in order to address those who are protesting and who call themselves the protectors of Mauna Kea, we must first understand who technically has control over access. And I think that what we've all done is we've ignored the fundamental threshold questions, which is who does? And if you look at the debates back in 1920, when the United States Senate debated whether or not the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act should become law, that was one of the major points, is that 50% of Mauna Kea is to be in the control of the homesteads. So let's begin there first.
Thank you. Governor Ige, if 30-meter telescope is given the legal okay, what will you do? Tell us in 90 seconds to make sure they can actually get to the top of the mountain.
Certainly, what we have done and what I did the previous time when we were preparing to enforce the law is very clear that I'm committed as Governor and Chief Executive to assure that everyone's rights are protected, that those who want to protest have the ability to protest, and those who are permitted, if the Supreme Court rules that the permit is valid, should have the right to proceed. We did convene. I asked the Attorney General to convene as the state law enforcement officer, law enforcement from throughout the state, to develop a specific plan to provide safe access for those who are contracted to construct the facility. And that did involve law enforcement from Hawaii Island. Obviously, Hawaii County Police will be a big part of that. It included enforcement officers from Care and the Sheriff's Department. As we know, that it will be a big challenge to assure that everyone's rights are protected and able to proceed. But it is a good example for utilizing the Attorney General as the state's law enforcement officer to organize law enforcement, identify the issues that are involved with getting access, and then being able to implement a plan that assure that the law is enforced.
Thank you, Governor Ige. I'd like to turn to our Republican candidates first for this next question. We're completely changing topics, and we're going to state budget. Our state budget, and this is going to go to you, Rep. Tupola, first. Our state budget has huge built-in increases based mostly on employee salaries and future commitments for pensions and benefits. How do you propose dealing with the unfunded liability issues and other issues to ensure that our state really has enough money to operate without completely bankrupting the people who support it? And I'd like you to take 2 minutes and address that question.
So unfunded liabilities is a conversation we've had at the legislature a few times. I sat on a committee where we tried to address some solutions for the issue. And what we should know, too, is that unfunded liabilities largely affect 2 of the main employers or employees of the state, which is police officers and firemen. And the reason why is because their pensions and the relation into how much money is given through the budget. So we have to make sure that we actually approach this problem correctly, because we don't want to affect some of our first responders in the way that they want to either one, apply and work in their job, and two, their retirement. And so I think with the unfunded liability, the first conversation that we need to have is how are we going to start to promise exactly what we can actually provide. Let me give you an example. In the state of California, the city of San Jose, they actually kept over-promising pensions, over-promising the amount of money that they could give to state employees, and guess what? They filed for bankruptcy. And they actually told people that they had to walk away and that they weren't going to get any of their pension. So it's something real that can really happen in cities and in states that if they don't actually have the money, and we are at 56% unfunded liability, meaning that we don't have enough money to pay out these pensions. So we have to start to talk about the reform that needs to happen on the employees that are coming into the state now. What kind of packages do we need to talk about that are realistic? Not because we want to give them less, because we appreciate all of the workers that work for the city and county as well as for the state that do public service. But we need to make sure that we're actually giving them a guarantee of what they can actually receive at the end of their careers. And I think that it's never been addressed, never been talked about, because people don't want to talk about, less people working for the state. But I do think what I've seen in my community is that people appreciate honest conversations. Honest conversations about what's realistic, what the government can realistically provide and what they cannot. And it's going to have to be a conversation that happens at the negotiation table when they talk with different unions, with different employees. And so I do believe we need to start now.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Okay, first of all, the reason we have the unfunded liability is because Hawaii is the worst state in the union in which to do business. We got the highest cost of living, and we've got this, of course, as I said, because of the Jones Act. So number one is we've got to get rid of that. The second thing is we need to look at what is the amount of taxation that you folks are having to pay, where it's going, and what I intend to do is to do a survey of every job in the state government within the first 6 months that I'm in office. And I'm going to find out what we're getting for what they're doing, and anything that is not worth keeping is going to get abolished, because I don't want to see any of the taxpayers' money being wasted. Number two, and really more importantly, the people who are entitled to those retirement funds and so forth are entitled to them. They've earned them, and I happen to be one of them. So in a sense, I have a conflict of interest, but it's so small I don't really worry about it. Anyway, but the thing of it is we need to get our whole economy straightened out. We need to be diversified. We start producing enough income to the various entrepreneurs here, and particularly in the agricultural area, we'll be producing enough money to have a decent surplus. I think we actually have a surplus right now. And when I was in the state senate, we did end up with a $500 million surplus. So the money can be here if we've got the right economy. And it's all based upon what we can do with what we've got. And what we have got are these restrictions which have got to be lifted. And I'll be doing everything that I can to get that done immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carroll. Representative Hanabusa, you've been in the state senate. This is not a new issue to you. How do you plan to deal with unfunded liability and the other budget issues in a way that allows us all to continue to live here? 2
The
minutes.
unfunded liability issue is one that has been addressed by the legislature in recent times. They have put money into the actual ERS system, that's the retirement system. But in addition to that, what we've also seen is a very talented group of people who have taken on the responsibility of actually addressing the unfunded liability and how the retirement system operates. One person who recently retired from being David's budget director, Mr. Machida, who's now assumed the role of being the head of the board. If you look at historically what he has done, for example, what he did was in response to what Mr. Polo was saying, when you look at first responders, in particular the police officers, one of the high costs, was the fact that they were able to put all overtime and special duty into the retirement. So just calculate it out. So what Mr. Machida did, and of course when we do these types of laws, it's always prospective. He said, okay, if you came into the police department at a certain point in time, you will not have the luxury of having all of your extra duty hours put in. With that, what has resulted now is the fact that they have better control over what that liability is. I believe when I spoke to him, he says he thinks it'll take us about 15 years at the rate we're going, if everyone continues to put in the money like it was anticipated, that in fact you will have some relief from this unfunded liability. It's going to take that kind of work, understanding not only the system itself, understanding how collective bargaining works in that system as well, and making sure that we keep our promises to those who have been our employees for a very long time, because they are the greatest asset of the state.
Thank you. Governor Ige.
Certainly, if unfunded liability is a concern of yours, then you definitely should vote for me. As chairperson of Ways and Means, I was the one that implemented the pension reforms in 2011, and we have changed the county and state pension system by increasing the retirement age, reducing the benefit, increasing the employees' contribution to the pension system. We've eliminated overtime and extra duty from the pension calculation. And the fifth thing that we did is that we made the employer responsible for pension spiking. So if an employer manages an employee poorly and allows them to spike their pension, although they really can't because beginning 2012, new employees cannot accumulate overtime to their pension, then we've already implemented all of the pension reforms that are necessary to ensure that our pension is stable and getting better each and every year. I also authored the measure to ensure that we begin to pre-fund the unfunded liability for the health fund. No other state in the country, it's only Hawaii, that pre-funds the pension or the liability accrued because of the health fund requirement. We are now funding 100%, or will in this fiscal year, of the annual contribution that will be required to ensure that every single public servant will get the health fund retirement benefit that they are counting on and expecting. That action alone in the last 5 years have saved all of you $1.6 billion over the next 20 years because I know how important it is to you. On top of that, I put the cost of unfunded liabilities directly on the table when I negotiated 14 new contracts for every collective bargaining group. We couldn't give them the raises they want because of the liability.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Ige. Appreciate it. And I'm going to stay with you, Governor Ige. You actually mentioned Palamanui Community College, and I know that the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce believes that that is the key to our workforce development issues here on the west side of Hawaii Island, to make sure that all businesses have qualified employees who actually know what the job is. So how are you going to support the growth of Palamanui Community College and its programs? 2 minutes, please.
Certainly I do believe that we have to expand the Palamanui campus. As you are aware, there are additional plans for additional phases that would add more classrooms to that facility. We need to proceed forward. The university system was looking at Palamanui differently and insisting that they had to self-fund that expansion of that campus. I do think that Palamanui campus should be treated like all other university campuses, and we ought to fund that campus and the additional infrastructure, and I think most importantly, the additional classrooms and facilities that it needs to provide a more well-rounded offering to the people of West Hawaii. I do think that we also need to utilize distance learning better, that there is no reason in today's technology that every single degree program cannot be offered here at Palamanui campus, except of course those that require labs and hands-on kind of opportunities. But in every other instance, I do believe that the university bureaucracy should move out of the way and let our students do what they want to be able to do, which is get access to any degree program within the university system on any campus. That would truly allow us to give our students the opportunity to pursue their dreams, to be able to pursue the higher education programs that they desire, that really allows them to get to the job and the career that they want.
Thank you, Governor Ige. Representative Hanabusa, what do you plan to do to support Palamanui Community College? What kind of programs or development do you see there? Please, 2 minutes.
The first thing we have to do is look at the community and interact with the community. What is it that the community feels is the demand? What is the skill set that you're looking for from those who would graduate from there? For example, just what I would think. Nelha is here. So there should be emphasis on that kind of research. I will tell you one of the most fascinating things for me was to know that Nelha creates these seeds, which are oysters, and they go all over Washington State. And every oyster, 80% of the oysters are actually seeded from Nelha. Think about that. Think about what else you can do. And what you need is the technology and people trained to do that. I went around, by the way, tasting all the Washington State oysters, and it's the same seed, but it's the area that makes it taste different. Because I wanted to understand, however we're doing that. The other area that is very important here is really your medical facilities and the technology that goes into that. I do know, for example, that the University of Washington has looked into, and it's just Washington because of the fact that it's my oysters and all of that, but it's they are interested in starting something here, actually also at Nelha, to train a certain type of technician, something that they feel that could serve the community and then go on and serve other communities. These are very important issues. You look at where you are and what it is, coffee. We all know CBB. This should be the hub for all the agricultural research that will address coffee and CBB. All other types of situations like that. I think that this would be the perfect campus. But again, come to you, see your needs, and address them by who you train.
And CBB is coffee berry borer, right?
Oh, right.
Okay, just in case
Coffee
anybody
berry
didn't
borer.
know that acronym. All right, same question, please, to Mr. Carroll. We have a community college campus here, Palamanui. How do you plan to support it? What's your plan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to incorporate by reference both the remarks of Ms. Hanabusa and Governor Ige as my own and adopt them. But what I intend to do, and this is very realistic, is to make, right now there's a need for about 80,000 pilots worldwide because the military used to be supplying them, but with atomic bombs you don't need that many pilots. So what I intend to do is to start a primo flight school that would begin on Oahu with the glider flying checkouts, but then the entire rest of that would become incorporated into the university here in Kona, where they would be going to single-engine land, and then they'll be going to multi-engine jet, and then be coming out with commercial instrument and commercial and instrument ratings so that they could go ahead and go to work for an airline. We could be charging foreign students up to $100 grand a year for that, and we'll also make available the best flying teaching in the entire world. We've looked at that in China, and they're actually wanting to do that here as well. So, and then the ultimate degree would be a degree in aviation science, similar to, well, there's an aviation university that give that degree, but it's a tremendous opportunity for us. We've got the perfect weather for it, and we've got the perfect facility for it, and it would be a tremendous benefit in terms of both income and education, and give all our kids an opportunity to get something they normally wouldn't even think about.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Representative Tupola.
Thank you so much. Prior to being a legislator, I actually was a professor at Leeward Community College. So I have a lot of love and concern for the University of Hawaii's system, as well as specifically helping the community colleges succeed. I think as a professor, our biggest concern was the competition that constantly happens between UH Manoa and all the community college campuses. And one of the solutions that some of the staff, some of the professors at the university have come up with is that really, in order to help UH succeed, we have to help each of these community colleges, as well as UH West Oahu and Manoa, identify what they do best. And we have to help them fit into the communities that they belong to, and that they can produce degree programs where the students from those colleges can immediately find jobs. Let me give you a few examples. At UH Hilo, what they excel at is providing the teacher resource training for Native Hawaiian immersion teachers. Only they do it. Nobody else does it. UH Manoa, specifically research development. UH West Oahu, creative arts media. LCC, which is Pro City and on the island of Oahu, they specifically help vocational training. So here for Palamanui, talking about what's in the community and how this community college can thrive in regards to what's around it and how it fits in the community. Because we want these kids to actually be able to get jobs. And I've had actual people from the harbors here, from the island of Oahu, say that they don't have enough skilled technicians to work on their harbors because there is no such program that exists for that. We also have people not just in aviation, but people saying that we don't have aviation mechanics that are ready to actually help and repair planes. We have a lot of fields that have deficiencies, and we need to help these community college find how they can make degree programs that will immediately benefit their community, that they will have resources from local businesses that will support the degree programs that they offer.
Thank you very much. Again, we're going to a new topic, and this is really the ocean. Hawaii's near-shore waters are one of our most valuable assets. We have boating, we have fishing, we have swimming, we have tourists who come to the beaches, but they are being degraded by sewage going directly into the ocean. Wastewater is incompletely processed, and sometimes wastewater and sewage is being illegally dumped into the ocean. Even the state itself has cesspools right at Honokai'au Harbor still, although they shouldn't. So the question is, in 2 minutes, and starting with you, Representative Tupola, if you are elected governor, how are you going to alleviate our wastewater crisis here in West Hawaii? Please, 2 minutes.
So West Hawaii, the biggest conversation that always happens is in regards to cesspools and if they should be allowable. Obviously, on the state level, Department of Health has talked about specifically having these conversions so that we have less of it and that we can actually get safer sewage systems out here. However, it is a huge cost for homeowners. It's a huge cost for private property owners. So one of the things we need to do on the state level is actually provide some of that support. Some of the bills we voted on recently provide tax relief for those who actually implement the change. They provide some support in regards to the infrastructure, but I do know that the first step has to be us determining how many people are still utilizing that system, how close are these to the ocean waters, and how many of them immediately need to be changed out, and how can we take immediate action? Because it's one thing to pass a law that it's illegal to have it close to the ocean line, but it's another thing to figure out the process whereby we can help private property owners and all of the owners along the coast to actually determine how to convert that over, how much that would cost. For some people, it would be millions, depending on how much they have to do and how old their system is. It's not to be said that they shouldn't start the process, but it is something that the state can intervene with, especially knowing that this wastewater is going into one of our most prized resources, which is the ocean. We want to make sure that we have oceans for decades to come, and if we don't take care of it, then who will? We need to make sure that at the Department of Health that we are taking strict steps towards making sure that this enforcement happens, and then assisting the community members to make sure they have the resources to allocate the funds to do that.
Thank you. Let me give you a 30-second follow-up because you have about 30 seconds left, and that is you've sort of addressed individuals, and I do want to talk more about that in a minute, I think, but the County of Hawaii has a wastewater treatment plant right up the road that isn't quite up to standards, and that combined with the cesspools that the state Department of Land and Natural Resources has at Honokai'au Harbor is dumping wastewater into the ocean. So give us 30 more seconds on this. How are you going to address the state's responsibility in this?
Yes, in our district, we actually have this same issue in regards to making sure that the county systems are actually up to par. We had the same issue with cloggage. The actual drainage and wastewater systems were so old that it actually didn't even drain out and it was going into the ocean. My first suggestion would be that in the counties, making sure that we mandate the allocation of funds to fix old infrastructure when it has to do with wastewater going into the ocean. This is bigger than what we think. In our district, when it's happened where there's actually been wastewater going to the ocean, it affects everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll, we have a wastewater issue here in West Hawaii with sewage going into the ocean from county facilities, from State Department of Land and Natural Resources, and from individuals. What are your steps going to be to alleviate this? 2 minutes, please.
Well, first of all, when I was in the legislature in the 70s, all of the environmental law that we currently have in place came off of my desk, starting out with the monk seal and green sea turtle protection. I worked with the Democrats to get it all passed. Gene King, Tadao Beppu, names that you probably don't remember because it's too long ago. But anyway, the environmental protection happens to be next to the economy, #1 issue for me. And first of all, there's everything, including what Ms. Tupola has already described, and the agency that should be looking at that on a statewide basis is the DLNR. I intend to make DLNR a very effective police force to see about this, because it's not only things like the sewer and the wastewater plant, but also you've got golf courses and other places that are doing point pollution into the ocean, and that has got to stop. One of the things historically was in the old days, the plantations just ran the gas right into the ocean. There was 2 or 3 miles on either side. I got a law passed which forced them to silt that up on land, and we now have clean ocean all the way, clean waters all the way down all of our coastlines. I will be on top of the environmental issues like you can't believe.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Representative Hanabusa.
The issue of the wastewater is really a Clean Water Act issue. So when you talk about the counties are primarily responsible, but there may be a portion where the state would have basic control over, and that would be if there's dumping out in the within the jurisdictional waters, then that would become the state issue. However, where it is the state's responsibility is the state is entrusted with the enforcement of the Clean Water Act. And if they don't do a good job, then of course the EPA will step in. And that's what you don't want to have happen, because then you're going to be put under a consent decree and you're going to have to fix it irrespective of whether you can do it in a timely fashion or not. And this is not a problem that just faces Kona or the Big Island. It is, for example, Honolulu. We're still facing it, and we don't have cesspools that are at issue. We actually have the sewage treatment plants that are at issue. But the enforcement has to be by the state, and if we don't do it, it's going to be the EPA. No question. The issue of the cesspools are going to have to be addressed and should be addressed. There's a 2018 study that was just done and given to the legislature about the cesspools and the challenges regarding the cesspools. And of course, some people say, well, we should have a septic system, and it is a cost issue. It is, how are the people going to afford to do this? And the question is going to be, and I think that the county needs to do before it gets taken out of their hands, is to come up with a plan of how you're going to address the violations of the Clean Water Act. Because if we don't do that, you're going to be forced into a situation where you're going to have to do it, which is not necessarily in anybody's best interest.
Thank you, Rep. Hanabusa. Governor Ige.
Certainly, it is a responsibility of the state to enforce the Clean Water Act, and I agree. It really is about working with the county and ensuring that they have a plan to come into compliance. We do manage the Clean Water Loan Program, and we can make loans available to the county to invest in the upgrade. I do think in this instance, the cost of the upgrade might be more than the funds that are available. And certainly I would be willing to work with the county to find ways to generate the revenue that they need to bring the facility into compliance. You know, there are laws on the books that provide for tax increment financing and other financing mechanisms that would allow the county to generate the funds that they need to be able to implement the improvements that are required by federal law.
Thank you very much. As Representative Tupola mentioned, the state has mandated the closure of all cesspools in the state. There's 88,000 in the state, but 50,000 of them are here on our island, so it's really a big island issue. And I don't think anybody disagrees with getting rid of cesspools, but right now the Department of Health only approves septic tanks as the solution, and septic tanks, number one, don't fit on a lot of people's properties because they're just not big enough, and we don't have the dirt here to do the proper leach field. I know more about this now than I ever did my whole life, and it's really a distressing situation. And although we don't disagree with the state, the issue is the state has got to take a look at new technologies. There's going to be billions of dollars in this, and right now this is falling completely on the shoulders of individual homeowners. So Governor Ige, starting with you, give us your 2 minutes on what you think the state can and should and will do to address this very pressing issue.
You know, certainly there's been a number of things that we've done on the state level, and the first level is really about public information. State Department of Health has been going around to the communities to explain what the challenges are with cesspools and why we need to change them out. And they have presented what the current technology is. I think you're right, septic tanks are the preferred or the suggested solutions. But I've asked the department to really go back and look at, there are new technologies that are coming online. There are companies that are proposing different kinds of solutions using probiotics and other kinds of organisms to help with the breakdown of sewage and other new and interesting technologies that can be a solution to the cesspool challenge all across the state. So I've asked the department to get proactive, to get engaged with these companies that have different ideas about solutions to cesspools other than septic tanks. And I do believe that this is one of those challenges where I think technology can help us. You know, we do have quite a ways before the hard deadline to eliminate the cesspools all across the state. And the technology and the new companies coming up with new ideas will definitely help us solve that. I agree with you. Current technology today makes it very expensive and not attractive for the homeowner to make the conversion.
Thank you, Governor Ige. Rep. Hanabusa, I want to turn to you, and I also want to mention that our Department of Environmental Management says septic tanks are not going to eliminate the waste going into the ocean just because of the structure of our island, so that's another issue. And Rep. Hanabusa, take your 2 minutes and tell us how you're going to help us solve the problem, please.
I'm sorry, what did you say? How?
I said, please take 2 minutes and tell us how you are going to help us solve this issue of having to replace the 50,000 cesspools that we all have. 2 minutes.
First of all, as you know, I think the hard deadline is the year 2050. And I think the reason why it was picked is because of exactly this problem. I'm not sure that, and I agree with you, that in fact the septic tanks as it now is not necessarily the answer in all situations, and cesspools may not necessarily be bad in all situations. I think what we need to do, and the problem that when government enacts these laws is that they sort of broad brush every situation. And what they should do instead is look as to in what particular situation you need to do something immediately, and maybe give people the opportunity to have a delay until sometime near the hard deadline so that you can, in fact, wait for the new technology. I don't see why we shouldn't have more of it. I mean, I think it's amazing. Waianae has always been the home for piggeries. And, you know, the Koreans have come up with a system now where the piggeries don't smell. So if that's possible, then why isn't some way to address this whole issue not available maybe internationally? So I think it takes a matter of getting away from the mindset that this is what we got to do. We got to address it by a certain period of time. And like you said, septic tanks needs leach fields, and that in and of itself cause a problem. And the real difference is the fact that just the solids fall to the bottom, but the fluids on the top has got to go sit somewhere. And if you have a rain or something like that occurs, then guess what? That's going to wash off into the ocean as well. So let's be more pragmatic and more realistic and really begin to assess what is it that needs to be done in the near future, what we need to do, we can do in the intermediate future, and what can we wait to address with new technology.
Thank you, Rep. Hanabusa. Mr. Carroll, what's your plan to help us address our cesspool issue, please?
Lucy have really covered the subject very well. My approach to it is going to be the DLNR is going to be seeing what are the most current problems that we have and which we know about, and go from there, and then work backwards from there to what the technology can take care of. I happen to have a cesspool in my farm which goes down to Honoka'a, but I don't intend to shut it down. I can tell you that. So it's an issue I want to look at a lot more carefully before I say exactly what I would do.
Okay. Be sure to share once you decide and you feel like it's appropriate to share. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Ms. Tupola, we do have an issue. 50,000 cesspools have to be closed in 32 years, which isn't very long, actually. So 2 minutes. Tell us how you will help this island.
Well, the three thoughts coming to my mind right now is first, what we discussed at the legislature, I brought up earlier about tax breaks as far as credits for those who actually install it and spend a large quantity of money so that they can make sure to receive some of that on the back end when they file. The second thing is that our city and county of wastewater actually approached me in my district and asked me to be a part of the solution, because one of the things that wears down the county system is people's inability to know what goes in wastewater. And actually we had a huge educational course about it in our our community. And I think that that is really one of the solutions that we need to start with, is that it's one thing to change the system, but it's another thing to educate the community on the differences and how to actually dispose of things and what should go down the drain and what should not, because that was actually affecting the whole entire system across the Waianae coast, is that there was too much things going in the drain that shouldn't have been there. I won't tell you what things were found there. I actually went and looked, and they showed me how bad it was and why the system was getting overrun. So I had to do an educational course across the community, which brings me to my last point, is that some of these discussions should happen in regular town halls with community members. I actually held my 41st town hall last month. Over the past 4 years, we hold so many town halls because we actually use them as strategy sessions. We invite all the community members to come out, and actually a lot of our solutions come straight from the community members, straight from experts that actually know better than us, looking at things in a different perspective and helping our community members to learn. And since you said that the large majority is on this island, that's where the town hall should happen. We should have these discussions with the community members, hear their frustrations, bring out experts, and start to make a strategic plan for the next 32 years until it actually happens, so that everyone feels a part of it, everyone learns, so that as the transition happens, they know how to get rid of the waste and what should and should not go in the septic tanks.
Thank you. We are at our final question before we give the candidates an opportunity to have their closing statements. And this has to do with health care. And Rep. Tupola, we're going to be going to you first on this. We've gotten a lot of questions about health care, as you all probably know, but just to reinforce, we have one private hospital in North Hawaii. We have 2 state hospitals, one Kona Community Hospital, the other Hilo Medical Center. And the state hospitals generally need additional funding to be able to operate, but they're generally not proceeding into the next century as would be appropriate. People now are forced to go to Oahu for a lot of medical procedures. It's inconvenient, it's expensive, it's not really fun to do if you've had an operation or surgery of any kind or you're not feeling well. So what are your plans, in 2 minutes please, to improve access to health care and hospital services, specifically here in West Hawaii? Save citizens time, money, and pain, really, in 2 minutes.
First off, I always mention that, the adult dental Medicaid benefits were cut during the recession, and the state has been really slow to reinstate that. And the reason why I bring that up is because that directly affects our homeless population. It directly affects their ability to actually go and get services that are regular dental services and not emergency services. That's one. Secondly, we've seen a lot of success with community health centers, which are kind of satellite centers to the state hospitals that help to serve underserved communities and rural areas where they have remote locations. We've seen a lot of success with this, and I think that especially on islands where it's hard to access healthcare, not just because you have to drive so far, but there's not enough services, we have to think about how we can make more of these community centers accessible in small areas. We've actually done it on Oahu in schools. We have little clinics within the school. We have them near hospitals. We have them outside of hospitals in various areas. The third thing is that we really have to start looking at our ambulance system. We've had this discussion at the legislature, and I'm sure you guys have heard that some of these neighbor islands have waited years to get a new ambulance, but yet their populations have grown exponentially. As of right now, the last we heard from EMS is that in Puna, when you call 911, you have to wait sometimes up to an hour and a half, and that directly affects people's ability to receive health care. We need to address this, and we need to prioritize the money that we put into these ambulances to get people to the services that they need. The last thing is that we need to support more initiatives and incentives for doctors. We have a shortage of physicians, and we have a shortage of physicians that work in rural areas. We have a program in the state where the state puts money, the federal government matches that money. That money is used to forgive medical school debt if the person concedes to work in a rural area. This has directly helped the area in Waianae, and I suggest that we put more money into that so that we can get more physicians in rural areas by helping them out with their educational debt.
Thank you, Rep. Tupola. Mr. Carroll.
Very rarely that I may say anything good about Democrats, but actually, with the Obamacare, they've almost obliterated the best healthcare system that we ever had. The healthcare system we had up till Obamacare in Hawaii was what should have been adopted in every state in the union. As governor of this state, I intend to go through the president to Congress and ask them to go ahead and basically totally abandon any involvement by the federal government in medical matters, and so they could make them completely state issues. And with that, ask that the system that we had here, which required employers to if anybody worked over 19 hours a week, they had to provide medical care. We had requests for people who did not have it. Everything was working very well. It was affordable and so forth. We need to get back to that system because with Obamacare and the impact of that has just been horrendous. As far as the various needs, I know about the various systems on this island. I know about the matter with the doctors are getting paid, the doctors are leaving. All of that relates to cost of living and things of that sort. This particular subject is very, very complex. It's very, very tied to taxation. It's very, very tied to what we want to do as opposed to what we can do. And as governor, I intend to make sure that affordability is going to be number one. And where we need medical care, we'll get it there. But it's going to have to be within the budgets of what we can afford. And that is going to be the thrust of it. I think, actually, as governor, I intend to get Dr. Josh Green to come on board as head of the health department. So, thank you.
So he'll have a job one way or another, is what you're saying? Representative Hanabusa, would you please address the same issue? How do you plan to help West Hawaii, most especially, with better access to health care and our hospital system? Thank you. 2 minutes.
Before I answer that, I want to tell Mr. Carroll that if he looks at the Affordable Care Act, Section 1560, he will find that the prepaid health care plan was an exemption, which the state did not exercise. And if you look at Section 1332, it is what's called the innovative plan, which I was hoping that the state would exercise to make prepaid our health care. So you might want to look at that, Mr. Carroll, the next time we meet. Now, the issue regarding access is really one of what kind of access and what level of access. If people expect acute care, which has been the issue and the problem for the Hawaii Health Systems Corporation in maintaining Maui Memorial, which of course, as you know, has been taken over by Kaiser, and Hilo is also acute care. And the question is that what is looked upon by the people in Kona as what you would like? That's a very expensive system. What you do have, however, is federally qualified community health centers, which is very effective for a certain level of care. And you know that we have one, I think, in Laiopua, right down up there, which has been developed as a federally qualified health system. And you also have the services available in Kona as well. So what you need to address is what type of level of care is access being requested on? That's the first thing. The second thing is the cost. And, you know, I tend to agree with Mr. Carroll on one thing, and that is that I always felt the prepaid health system was a very good system and made us lead the nation in that. And we, of course, had it in place since 1974. So we need all of that, but know that the federal government has extended CHIP for children, and also federally qualified health system is funded for 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Governor David Ige, please address the question.
Certainly, I would pursue a couple of things. One, you know, I did support and believe that we need to expand the rural residency program. As you know, Hilo Medical Center started a primary care residency program, and I really do believe in order to improve access to health care, it really is about getting more residency programs on the neighbor island. And I think that what we did at Hilo Medical Center to begin that program is fundamentally important, and if we can duplicate that so that we can get more access to residency programs in rural communities, that will help us get more doctors. Now, I've been a big supporter of telehealth. You know, I think the most immediate is to build out the telehealth networks to allow us to utilize, when appropriate, telehealth services and encourage more physicians to be able to deliver telehealth services to our communities. And I think that is the most immediate response to get access for certain kinds of care. Obviously, you can't do surgery. There's lots of things that you can't do via telehealth. So we do have to look at the healthcare facilities. You know, I agree with Colleen. The federally qualified health center, and in fact, Waianae Coast Comprehensive, I think is the best example of expanding services as appropriate and making the FQHCs a more vibrant part of our healthcare access network for a broader range of services. And I think Waianae Coast also runs residency programs out of that facility, so we can have a win-win in with supporting the FQHCs, support residencies out of the FQHCs, and build a different kind of model for access to healthcare, because we do know the challenges in rural communities are very different than what they are in urban.
Thank you very much. It is now time for our closing statements in each candidate, and we will go left to right to get these. We'll have 2 minutes to let us know what their final thoughts are, starting with United States Representative Colleen Hanabusa. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for sticking with us. When I decided to run for this seat, it was because I believed that my political journey brings me here. As you've heard, I was in the state legislature in the Senate for 12 years. I spent the last 4 as the president of the Hawaii State Senate, the only woman at that point to have led either house in the Hawaii State Legislature, the only Asian woman nationally. And the reason why it's so important for me to come back and run is because as the time I spent in Congress, I have come to recognize the critical role Hawaii plays. We are, as President Obama said, we are going to have the 21st century defined by Asia Pacific, or now Indo-Pacific. And then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said, and let us not forget, that Hawaii is the gateway to Asia Pacific. We have an important role, we have a critical role, and we have a role, as you know, from the issues regarding North Korea and so forth, and Russia and China, and everything in this, quote, Indo-Pacific region. Hawaii is important, and we must maximize that, and we need somebody in the role of the governor who understands that and has the relationships built accordingly. But I want you to know one of the things that I carry deep in me. In 2008, Senator Kokobung and I spearheaded what was called Sustainability 2050. And what I always remember is when we asked the bright high school seniors who were going away to college, how many of you will come back? Not one hand went up because they felt there wasn't room for them in Hawaii. That is my primary goal, that we will always have a place, job opportunity, and housing for the children of Hawaii.
Thank you, Representative Hanabusa. Governor David Ige, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you all for having this forum, and thanking all of you for sticking with us and being here. I want to thank you for the honor and privilege of serving as your governor here. I'm the only candidate who's running for governor who really has a real record of accomplishments that you can look at, touch, feel, see. Leadership is about public service. It's about doing things on behalf of our community that gets things done. Our state leads the nation in so many important areas. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We have the lowest crime rate in the country. We are the first state to commit to 100% clean, renewable energy, and we are the first state and only state to commit to a sustainable future for development all across our state. We have built 5,300 new homes in this state, of which 2,000 are affordable. Homelessness is down for the first time in 2 consecutive years. On Hawaii Island, by working with your mayor, homelessness is down 40% here. We are also seeing record numbers of visitors to our islands. Employment in the visitor industry is the highest it's been. And I've been involved and committed to investing in infrastructure here on Hawaii Island. As I said, we've invested more than $1.1 billion, and you see it each and every day. Queen Kahumanu Highway, the investment in Ellison Onizuka Airport, the investment in Hilo Airport, Hilo Harbor, Kealakekua Harbor. Every single infrastructure investment in this community is an investment in all of you. I really do believe leadership is about taking action. It's more than a title. It really is a commitment to improve the quality of your life each and every day. I humbly ask for your support.
Thank you, Governor Ige. Mr. Carroll, 2-minute closing statement, please.
Mahalo, Meke aloha to each of you for coming tonight. I'd also like to say that Marissa Hearn, running for Lieutenant Governor, is sitting at my table. She did not get to talk tonight. I would ask everybody to go say hello to her and see what she has to say. She's a terrific candidate for Lieutenant Governor. The reason I'm running is I have the burning desire to see Hawaii as it should be. We can talk all day about what we have, what we think we should have, or what, and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, and I indict the Democrat Party for this, they've had 64 years to make this state what it should be. It's not. If I had been governor when I ran against Lingle 2 times, we would be totally different. We would have no shipping restrictions, we'd have worldwide commerce, and we would be the most solvent entity in the entire world. We are already the best place in the world to live. I am only running for 1 term. I know I've lost a lot of races, but I can tell you that I'm capable of doing this. I've had, I hate to even talk about how much experience I've had, but more than everybody on this table put together. So, but I appreciate what everybody's done. I feel sorry for Governor Ige to have handed such a lousy situation to take care of, but I think he's done the best that he could, and I intend to rely on him as your governor. I'm going to be available tonight. It's very hard for me to talk in 2 minutes, which I know we're required to do. All I can tell you is that I have 21 major reasons for running, and they are between the ages of 8 and 1 week. So, but I really think that we can, if I can be governor, this place can really, really hum. And I figure, by the way, I'm going to be 90 next year, so I'm not young, and but I could go skiing and surf for the rest of my life. But I feel so much burning desire to get this place on the right track that it should be. I have the capability to do it. My health is incredible. Mahalo, neke aloha, pumehono.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Representative Andrea Tupola, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. It's been an honor to be with Sherry and to be with these candidates next to me. I'm super grateful to represent the Waianae Coast on the west side of Oahu, and I feel very honored. I actually ran for office as a mother, as a professor at the college, a community member, and everybody said, there's no way you're going to break into the political system. There's no way you're going to win. And I actually won my first time. And I share that story because I know there's a lot of people that want to see a fresh change, a new perspective. And I think that in order for us to create a new path for Hawaii, we can't solve the problems, the systemic issues that we have in the state with the same mindset in which they were created. We need a new perspective. And I think that that's what it's allowed me over the past 4 years serving in the legislature, not just as the representative District 43 and the minority leader, but as a community advocate looking at all the solutions. Over the past 4 years, it's allowed me to be teachable, still implement innovative solutions because I still believe everything's possible. We've been able to do great things in the district, and a lot of it is about me empowering my community to take ownership. This is how much government can do for us. And at the end of the day, our problems are vast. And the gap that we have to fill comes from us as community members, as residents of Hawaii, saying that we're willing to stand up, to take part, to be empowered, to be inspired, that we can find solutions and changes. I'm committed to decrease the cost of living so that more of our local families are housed. We don't want to see more of the families in Hawaii pack up and leave because they can't afford to live here. I'm committed to creating an atmosphere for businesses to thrive so more local families can stay in this place that they call home for generations to come. I'm committed to making sure to be a champion for education. As one of the only candidates that will have children in the Department of Education, I want to make sure that we don't forget our keiki and that we always remember that our underserved communities are what makes our state strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tupola. And before we conclude, I'd just like to mention a couple things. When any of you would like to stick around and help turn these benches back into cafeteria tables, the team would appreciate it. Thank you so much to Susie and Lydia from the Chamber for all their support, and Wendy and Jane and everybody. Thank you so much to the food truck guys. Thank you to Sharon and Stephanie, Sharon Sky and Stephanie Donahoe, integral members of the team, to Scott Ordway, our sound guy, to the police officers for keeping us all safe. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Mr. Vogt, who stuck it out. Again, thank you so much, Alan. And for all of you, thank you. It is so important to vote. Please remember, that's what this is all about. And now let's give our candidates a warm round of applause.